Hi, everyone. My name is Barry Heidowitz. I'm the Director of Education and Labs at XtremeLabs. And today we have Josh Jones, MCT, presenting on Microsoft Learn plans, how to implement this new feature as a trainer. If you have any questions, feel free to key them in the chat. And also, I posted my contact info. I'll post it again if you have any questions about Josh's presentation or products or services offered by XtremeLabs. Feel free to key the messages, key the questions in the chat, and otherwise I'll try and present them. I leave it to Josh to decide when to take a break to answer any questions based on his timing and his presentation. And with that, I'll hand it over to him. Thanks, Josh.
All right, thank you for the kickoff, Barry, and hello everyone, and welcome to the XtremeLabs MCT Meetup. Barry, as he just introduced me, my name is Joshua Jones, and today we're talking about Microsoft Learn's new feature, Plans, not to be confused with Planner for Microsoft 365. So let's jump right in. Before we go, we're just going to give myself a little bit of time to do my spiel. So I am Joshua Jones. I am a regional lead for Japan for Microsoft Certified Trainers. And aside from being a regional lead, I also am volunteering as a Learning Rooms expert. And I am also a LinkedIn marketing insider. So I like to be involved in the community and learn more about skilling and how to apply skills to our business. If you're interested in connecting with me, here's my contact information right here. You can add me on LinkedIn. And I'm actually putting that link here in the chat. One moment, sorry. There we go. Oh. You can copy and paste that. And then also my email is there as well. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. Quick tangent for anyone who has not joined a Microsoft Learning Room. What they are is that you are able to join a community for anyone who is interested in Microsoft skilling or Microsoft technology, and it is run entirely through Teams. And I'll actually show it real quick on my screen since we have a little bit of time. So if you were to access the Microsoft Learning community, and here on the right side, there is Learning Rooms. And there are various learning rooms based on the topic that you want to study more about. The learning room that I am actually volunteering in, we do everything but in Japanese. So maybe not the most interesting for everybody here. But if you have a technology that you're passionate about, I think it's a really great community and something that you can do to communicate with others and learn more. So just had to do a quick little plug there for that. Aside from that, though, we're going to be talking about also on Learn plans. So everyone who is here is either directly or indirectly impacted by Microsoft Learn. I think it's something that's very central to what we are doing as trainers, as people who are working with trainers, as learners ourselves. We're using Microsoft Learn. And Microsoft Learn has this new feature called plans. So we're going to go over what plans are and how we can actually set up these plans, and then what goes into the management for them. It's really not that too difficult of a topic. I think that 1 hour is a perfect amount of time to explain it, show a little bit how setting it up works, and discuss some use cases as a group even. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. So what are plans? What is an overview of this new feature, and what are the use cases for it? Before we do that, I just kind of want to make sure we're all on the same page here, so I threw in a little quick survey, one question. You can scan the link here or I also will have the link for you in the chat. So either click on the link right here in the chat or scan the QR code and let me know. Have you used plans for Microsoft Learn? Have not even heard of the feature, or maybe you have heard that it was announced, but you haven't really had a chance to read up on it yet, or you know everything about it, but just haven't made a plan yet, or maybe you're already using plans. All right, we have some info coming in here. I'll give everybody a chance to go ahead and access the survey. Again, you can access it through the link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code with your cell phone. I love how this Microsoft Forms survey updates live in my PowerPoint. It's very handy. All right, 1 more minute. Some people are probably still getting their cell phones ready and scanning now or filling out the survey. All right, I think we've given everybody a fair chance to, oh, thank you, whoever replied just now. Okay, good. So it seems like this audience actually we're in a very nice sweet spot where a majority of us have actually not heard of plans yet, or maybe we have vaguely heard of it, but not the details. So I'm glad to be able to speak about something that won't be too repetitive. I was nervous that everybody was going to say they're already making plans and that I would be preaching to the choir. So really excited to talk about this with everyone. So we're going to just go ahead. So plans, what they are, they're this new feature that are very similar to collections. So collections are something that we've already had in Microsoft Learn, where you can save content to a collection, a group of resources all bundled together, right? So plans are similarly organized content, but they're different in the fact that these are goal-oriented, right? So any Learn user can make a plan, and it's a free feature that's part of Microsoft Learn. Everything on Microsoft Learn is free, right? That's the whole point of Microsoft Learn. So we're taking the content that we want to organize into one of these plans. And then what we do with that is we can share a plan that we've created with other users, and we can then track the progress of our users, and they'll even get automatic updates from Microsoft Learn, reminding them to complete the content. So we won't do a full survey for this, but if everyone could just let me know, either raise of hand in Teams or in the chat, if you've ever done a skill challenge. Right? Who here has participated in a skill challenge before? AI skill challenge or build challenge or ignite challenge. Okay, cool. Some familiarity. Awesome. So this is very similar to how those are structured, right? We share the link, people will agree to start it, and then once they've registered, we track their progress throughout the entire learning event. In this case, instead of a skill challenge, it is a plan. Functionally very similar, but plans anyone can make. You don't have to be Microsoft staff and aligned to an event to make a plan. It's also very cool because you can share it to specific groups, which I will get into later in the presentation. So if you have, for example, a class, right? And we want to teach this class, but we don't want to just teach them in the classroom. We want to set up asynchronous learning for a whole week span. We're going to check in on everyone's progress next week, see if everyone understood the material, and I'm going to assume if you have this marked as completed, you guys actually read the material, right? So we have that group sharing capability that is really going to allow you to manage these plans and who you're sharing them with and how that group is doing with the content, which is how you would implement it into a classroom as a trainer. So some of those use cases, like I just mentioned, one of the biggest pluses of creating a plan is if we are teaching content that's not necessarily aligned to a certificate currently, something that is not a Microsoft official courseware, we're able to curate content and make our own custom lessons. And there's a lot of ways to share that, but one of those ways to share that information could be through creating a plan, so that when your user who's already used to going through Learn as their textbook, they can now look at a plan that you've created and shared with the class, and it tracks their progress and gives them notifications reminding them, hey, you need to finish this class that you're enrolled in. So that's where it really comes in and starts to foster this asynchronous learning. So asynchronous learning, it's this concept where we're all studying at different times, but the teacher is still facilitating the learning and is still following up with lessons in between and making sure that the students understand it. So you can kind of think of it as we're all going to go read this textbook for 1 hour on our own time throughout the week. Then we'll all come back together for our 15-minute weekly check-in, and the teacher will facilitate a discussion based off of what was discussed. That's asynchronous learning, which is a little bit different from what we normally do with Microsoft official courseware. But plans make it very easy because you can put together whatever Frankenstein monster of a course that you want to, mix and match pieces, and share it with your users. Another thing that you can do that's very interesting is that if you have a following, maybe you're a top voice of whatever technology it is that you specialize in on social media or your blog or whatever it might be, you can create a plan that you know that your readers or your followers would enjoy, and you can share that plan with them, and it's a more interactive experience than just, hey, here's a bunch of links, go read it. I don't know if you read it or not. A plan allows you to kind of get that extra insight into, okay, this many users actually signed up for my plan, and this many users actually completed the plan that I curated. So you can promote some upskilling to your followers, and it's a lot more interactive than the collections which plans are created from. Or maybe you're in charge of the internal staffing and upskilling inside your company. So there's a good case as well for HR departments or user training departments who want to do in-house training about something super specific. Maybe they've noticed one area of improvement that a department in their company needs, but it's not really aligned to a specific existing course. Well, again, they can put together what they need to answer that specific need and share it as a plan. And the huge benefit here is that that plan is measurable and we can track it. And so you're not just throwing a collection into the wind and then your employees say, yeah, of course I read that document, even though they might not have necessarily read the document all the way. So that's why plans are distinguished and different from collections. So we can go ahead and actually check out a sample plan together. So I have listed a link here in a QR code. You may have noticed I like QR codes, but I also have a link. Here, which I want to share with you if I can. Give me 1 second. We're going to look at a plan that I actually created. All right. So everybody, if you follow the link from the QR code, I'll display it for just one quick more second for everyone who prefers Learn on mobile. The link is also in the chat if you do need it. So the plan, once you open it, you should be greeted to a page that looks something like this. And so when we're first looking at it, there's an explanation here at the bottom of what plans are, since they're relatively new, and your users are going to need a reminder of how to use this. But at the top here is the specific information about the plan I've created. So I was having a little bit of fun. This plan is a plan about plans. So I took the documentation about plans and I put it into a plan so you can have hands-on experience of how plans work while you're learning about them. So you can notice here the outcomes of this plan. This is content that I've personalized. So you're able to specify to your learners what they will gain from participating in this plan, what skills they should be acquiring from participating in the plan. And you can also see who created this plan. So I'm actually on a separate user account for testing, but we can open it and you can see here it'll show them who created the plan that they're participating in. So we're going to go ahead and start. And you agree that you'll be sharing your progress, right? Again, the big point of plans and why we use plans is we're tracking progress. It gives insights into how our learners are doing and at what pace they're moving through the content. And maybe you can check in with your users based on how far they've gotten into a plan. And then you'll also receive some emails about following up and finishing your plans if you leave it partially completed. So, all right, we're going to agree and submit. Now, this is not what a typical plan might look like, right? This plan is obviously just a demonstration of the feature, but you can see I have 4 milestones. The milestones are very similar to a learning path in a traditional course, except you might have a learning path as part of your milestone, or several learning paths as part of your milestone. This is what your users are completing. So if we're tracking progress, 1 milestone completed will count as 1 item completed when we're looking at reporting. And I'll point that out again later. So these are just articles. It tells you the resource type. And if I were to click on this, it will open the resource in a separate tab. And here I have an overview of plans on Microsoft Learn. We can go through here and read some of the information that I've already been sharing throughout this presentation. It tells you the days that this milestone should take. I do want to point out there's a limitation. Currently, the only way to measure how long a milestone will take is in days, and the minimum days is 1. So hopefully everybody here is able to read this article in less than 1 day. I don't think this will take you 1 day to complete. However, it does have that limitation. So when you're creating your plans, you might want to consider if things really do need to be a separate milestone. More than anything, I'm trying to showcase milestones can be separate, but we could put all of these articles into 1 milestone and say that that takes 1 day. And I think that's a lot more realistic. So we have these milestones and our user will go through, and if they open an article, because an article is 1 page, opening an article will automatically complete that item. And once everything in a milestone, every item in a milestone is completed, you'll notice that the milestone is also completed. Right? So now this progress is being tracked. And again, on my side, I would be able to see that the user test purpose Joshua Jones has already completed this milestone. If I click resume, it will show me where I should be reading next. This will be ordered in the order that you've created the milestones. So milestone 1, milestone 2. And then within each milestone, it's just in order of how we ordered the content within. So I push resume and it highlights it and it says, hey, click here. It's this glowing purple one. And then I know that I need to read this article next to continue going in the path that the creator has set. And then I read through how to create, which is what we'll be talking about in just a sec. And then I come here. Again, it's an article, so it's automatically completed. So you can go ahead and explore at your own rate how this plan works as a function. And you can kind of see how we're able to create these milestones to separate subtopics for a greater goal. Again, the greater goal is the overall skill that you want someone to have. So it could be something like proficiency in Microsoft SharePoint, or your goal could be teaching someone to integrate LinkedIn and Dynamics 365, right? It could be anything that you really want to put together and have a user take that skill and learn more about it. That's your overarching goal, which we would obviously model our whole entire plan around. And then within that, there's obviously subsections that they'll need to know. And we can divide this into milestones and items within each milestone. And here we have the outcomes of going through and learning all of this content. All right. So far, so good. Did I lose anybody? Or it's pretty straightforward, I think. If you're familiar with Microsoft Learn courses, or if you're familiar with any skills challenges, then I think the layout is very similar. It should feel familiar when you're going through and completing a plan. I saw some thumbs up. Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to tuck this away. Now, because we're making our plans from collections, a lot of people are always asking the question, well, do I need to make my collection into a plan? They're very similar, and you can already share collections. Well, collections, again, are not tracked, and so your use case is going to follow that feature, because that is the main difference in collections and plans. So your collections are more of just a free list of a bunch of resources that you're trying to share with somebody. It could be something even like a manager on a team notices some courses that would be interesting for the members of the team to work towards and learn those skills. Well, okay, there's just a list of courses, no particular order, no tracking of when those courses are completed. It's just a list of information. Here you go, at your own pace. So we're not tracking those users, and we just want to share a lot of links in Learn with somebody. There's not necessarily a follow-through planned or anything. That user is going to go through it at their own pace, and we've already shared the resource, so our job is done. That's a collection. Plans, on the other hand, because we're taking that data and those insights, we know how far along our learners are within a plan. And it's one goal or skill that we are trying to achieve by sharing this with our learner. Again, very similar to our learning courses that Microsoft is already putting together. But now we can curate the content and we can have our learner go through that. And because we're tracking it, and because you have the option to export that data as a CV, and then you can also, you don't control the nudging necessarily. The email nudging is all handled automatically by Microsoft Learn, but you have that follow through of Microsoft Learn reminding people, hey, you need to finish this plan that you've started. And also you as the teacher, you're able to check how far people have progressed. Hopefully you can see the difference and start to imagine, okay, well, if I'm doing this, then a collection is fine. I don't need to go through the trouble of making a plan. Or for the class that's coming up later this month, I definitely want to try out using a plan in class. I think when you remember the main difference being that we're tracking it and we have follow through as a goal, that you can understand why plans would be the choice that you would, when you would implement choice plans for your class. So if everyone is still on board, I want to show you the I say backside, but it's very user-friendly. The backside of these plans, how we're setting them up so that our users are able to go ahead and look at those. So first, I will show you how everything maps while it's still on one screen, and then I'll show you how it works in Learn, so you can kind of see me going through and what I'm clicking in what order. So first, you're creating your collection. Remember, plans, you don't just make plans directly. You first make a collection, and then we take our collection and it's copied into a plan, right? So we can take a collection, and it doesn't convert the collection. I'm being careful about saying that. You make a copy of your collection. Your collection still remains, but now you have a plan based around that content. So first, we're going to create a collection. We might be interested in talking about SharePoint, right? Maybe we have a SharePoint lesson coming up for a client. So we're going to add any SharePoint knowledge that we have. We're going to add it to a collection. If you don't have a collection, you can also create one new from this screen. So add to collections, new collection. You also notice there's an add to plan option here, and you might be thinking, well, that's less steps, right? You can only add to a plan that is already created, but is not yet published. So even though I have multiple plans that I've published, because they are published, you cannot edit them. Once a plan is published, you cannot edit that plan. And so even if I push add to plan for this content, which is a learning path, it will not allow me to add it to a plan because I've already published all of my plans. I don't have any in the editing or staging phase. So I create my collection, and once I have my collection, again, we are copying it. So it's a little bit, maybe not the most intuitive location to have the plan creation button. You might assume there would be a plan button outside of copy, but it's within the copy dropdown. And the reason being, again, is that you're not creating a plan from scratch, and you're also not converting a collection into a plan. You are making a plan based off of the content in a collection. So we're going to copy this collection. Here I have Dynamics 365 and LinkedIn Integrated Environment, and I make a plan out of this content I curated. The collection remains after I do this. That way, if I want to edit the collection and make a new revised version of a plan later, I would create a new plan. So Dynamics 365 LinkedIn version 2 might be the name of my new plan. Because again, we cannot edit published plans. Okay. So this is a lot of colors and a lot going on, but I'll kind of zoom in and go through it piece by piece. So first up here, when we just logged into the plan about plans, you all saw that there was a title and a description, and there was also the outcomes over on the right-hand side. We'll get back there. So this title and description are very simply down here. So when we're creating it, it'll be in the right-hand side. It's a window that pops out, and I'll show that on screen in just a moment. And the title and description that we chose map directly to what the user sees. So we're controlling what is displayed here, and the user is looking at this, and this is the first impression they have of the plan that we're sharing with them. Right? Then over here on the right side, we have those learning outcomes. So the learning outcomes are going to be the takeaway, what they're learning from this, right? What the objectives are. So these learning outcomes are again, mapped directly to the outcomes 1, 2, and it cut off, but there is a third optional outcome. You're required to list one. You do need to list at least one outcome. And if you add 2 or 3, then they're separated out into bullet points as shown here. So that way, when my users are about to start a plan, they can look over what exactly they can expect to get out of this, if this plan is even right for them. Maybe it was shared with them because they're part of a group or they saw a link for it, but they look at the outcomes and they think, oh, well, this isn't exactly what I'm hoping to learn today. We want to make sure that they have a good first impression and they know who the content is geared for. Then once we've set that backdrop, then the learning experience is all the better for them as they dive into it. Okay. And then you also might remember from the plan about plans, we had these milestones, right? The milestones we are also setting as the plan creator. So the milestones, you can set the milestones here, and we have 2 milestones in this example. And then we've added example description. This right side here is the plan creation screen. So I typed example description. The user sees example description. And then the recommended days to complete the milestone, how long it should take. Because we are limited, I have chosen to write 1. And so the days to milestone will be written here as 1. You can do upwards of 100 days, but it's recommended that you probably shouldn't make one milestone take that long. Milestones should probably take about 10, maybe 15 days max. But realistically, we probably want to shoot closer to 2 to 5 for your milestones, because you have to remember, in one plan, you'll have several milestones. And if it's taking users too long, you're not going to see them go to completion. And then here, the order of the included content and what content is included is all controlled here as well when we set up the plan. So it's even down to the order, and the order is important because when we have the user click resume, it does go in order of what we've set up here. So if we have content that is referencing previous content, right, that conical learning, we want to first start with content that is very introductory or review, make sure everyone's on the same page, and then kind of slowly ramp up our difficulty throughout is a good practice to have. That way they're not surprised by any information or having to backtrack and learn things over again. Or on the other side, they read the advanced information first, and then the remaining content is all things that they've already had to learn to do the first portion of your milestone. That's why the ordering is pretty important here. And then before we publish it, again, a published plan cannot be edited, so it's very important to make sure that we have the plan finished in a state that we like before we publish it, before we share it. So that's enough showing you screenshots. I want to actually show you what it looks like. So let's go ahead and look at a collection I have. All right. The recording will be posted by XtremeLabs. So they're usually pretty good about posting that to YouTube afterwards. And it's also shared on the registration page. So definitely feel free to check out the recording for anyone who has to go in and out. Anyways, so we have this collection here. So this is what I started with to make the plan about plans. Now, does anybody remember from my explanation, how do I take this collection and create a plan from it? If you could type in the chat. what I should push next, if anyone remembers. Yes, very good. Copy. Thank you so much. So we're going to push copy, and we're not going to create a duplicate collection, but rather we want to make a plan out of this collection. So we're going to go ahead, plan, and here you can see we first are setting the title. So Plan About Plans version 2. Description, we're going to leave as is. And outcomes, learning, fun, and wow. Yeah, I would definitely be on board. All right, so we have our details all set here. We create the plan. And you'll notice here now that we have navigated to plans. It's a little bit small, so I'll zoom in. We're now looking at plans within Learn. All right, so we have one milestone, and we have our learning outcomes and our title and description. Well, we don't want milestone to be just one. We want to parse it out like we did with the previous example. So we're going to edit. And here, this is the portion where we can manage our milestones. Okay, so I'll change milestone 1. We'll change the title to Overview. Okay. And then we want all of these to be in separate milestones, just for practice sake. So I will click milestone 2, 3, 4. Now I have 4 milestones. Well, all of my articles are still in milestone 1. So to move them to the correct one, I will just click on this folder icon right here, and I will move create to milestone 2, start and complete plans to milestone 3, and best practices to milestone 4. And then it's just as simple as going through and naming all of them. So I'm just going to copy the information from when I did it previously. Thanks, Microsoft Edge. And I can still move this later. Yeah, so I did mention earlier, we are limited. You cannot use fractional days. It's a minimum requirement of 1. So even if I were to do 0.5, it has to be greater than or equal to 1. They do give you a nice warning, so at least you're not frustrated pushing buttons and having to go back and say, oh, that field was invalid. But yeah, it is limited to just 1. So because it has that limitation, it's important when you're making these milestones to understand your learner doesn't really care about that limitation. They're just going to say, oh, it takes 1 day. So it might be good to kind of keep that in mind when we're creating milestones and make sure there's about 1 day's worth of content per milestone. Just a thought. Or you could explain to all of your learners that they can ignore the days to complete for the way you've set it up. If you want to explain it to them that way, that's fine too. It doesn't really have any impact on how they use it. It's just the information displayed will say 1 day, but there's no change in the experience for the user if they do it in 1 day or 100 days. It's just a suggestion of how long it should take them. So we have a title for all of these, and we have the recommended days to complete each milestone, and we'll save it. And you can see now it's split up into the 4 milestones, like the example that I provided earlier. All right. Looks good to me. We have our outcomes, our title, our description, and now we can publish it. It does remind you here, if you publish your plan, you're going to need all of this information set first, and then you can share and manage the plan after you've published it. You cannot share it before publishing. So if I publish my plan, remember, we cannot edit it once it is published. You will need to make a new plan to update the information with additional or different modules. Maybe you get some feedback from a user. I don't think this was really that on topic. Or you know that the product has changed recently and you want to add the new information. In that case, you would go back to your original collection, edit the information there, or maybe make a separate collection for version control. And then you would publish that as a new plan. And then from that point on, you share the new plan with your users. Anyways, let's go ahead and publish this. All right, now that it is published, you'll notice that it has changed from publish to manage. All right, so now I'm able to manage it. Before we move on to management, I just want to check, is everybody still doing all right? Did we have any questions about creating plans up to this point?
There were a couple of questions on the Q&A section.
Ah, yes, Q&A, thank you. I
Don't know
had
if you
chat
saw
open,
those.
but not Q&A.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So collections is just a knowledge base versus plans are like a LMS. Yeah, I would say that the plans are closer to the LMS experience where you're curating what order they'll go in and you're tracking at what progress they're going to go through it. Plans are still a very new feature, so hopefully we can see it to be expounded on and get more of what we hope out of it to be comparable to a individual or third-party LMS. But I definitely do think it's great because all the content is already there in Learn. So yeah, that was a great question about comparing knowledge bases and LMSs to collections and plans. There was another question. So with the plan, companies need not have an LMS to curate learning, correct? Yeah. So again, plan is very easy to use and it has all of your content on Learn right there. You might get more features out of a different LMS, but I think for the ease of use and for the amount of information that's readily available, that having the option to use plans is very convenient. Custom knowledge checks are not currently supported. That was an idea that was floated during the early announcements of the tool. So from what I understand, that feedback was provided and they will be looking into it for future adaptations. But right now, we still cannot make a custom knowledge check. But if we could, that would be really cool because then you can make sure that users are understanding what you want them to understand. And then even better, one day would be able to see the results of the knowledge checks and maybe even have a requirement where knowledge check must be passed at such percent in order to complete a milestone. That would be the ideal situation. So if you have that feedback, please submit feedback to Microsoft so that they know. Yeah, so the question about collections. Can we only add Microsoft Learn content to a collection? Yeah, so the supported content currently is only for within Microsoft Learn. So it's double-edged sword. You have the convenience of having all of your content right there and being able to add it very quickly to a collection. While you're going through and learning yourself, you think, oh, this is really great for that collection that I'm making for so-and-so factory or whatever clients you might be teaching. Well, you just click the add collection button at the top of the resource and it's added very simply. But on the other flip side, you don't get to add your external sources. You would have to provide that separately to the client. And so because collections have that limitation, obviously that affects, because we make plans from collections, that affects how plans can be created. So that is also a good ask though. So if you have that type of idea, let Microsoft know that you would like to see plans capable of doing that in the future. And there was one more question about the Google Classroom. It's similar to Google Classroom. I think Google Classroom, because you can add more of the external resources, it's a little bit different of a user experience than the collections and plans. Plans are, again, assuming that you want to share content already on Learn and curate it for your audience. Ooh, that's a great question. There's a question in the chat for you, Barry. Any comments? Oh, he's typing. All
So
right.
I'll
Oh,
need
go ahead.
to. I was typing in a message too. I'll need to check with the content team about if and how plans are integrated with the labs. But yeah, it's a very good question. I'll have to check and get back to you.
Yeah. Plans are very new to Learn as well. So I think there could be moving forward that type of integration in the pipeline. So looking forward to any news as well, myself personally. All right. So now we're going to just very briefly go over the management side of it. I say management, but you really only have two main tasks when we talk about plans management. So you're going to be inviting users, and you can invite individuals or groups. So inviting an individual, you will just click on Manage and invite your learners, and you can send them a link, or you can send them an email from a template. And then same thing for inviting a group. The great thing about doing a group is when you invite someone from a group, it makes sure that that user is associated to a group. The user doesn't see a group. There's no competitive feature like in an AI skills challenge or a skills challenge, for example, cloud skills challenge, where you see who read all of the content the fastest. There's no feature where they can see other users, but you as the plan owner, you can see who is in what group. So if I have multiple clients and a custom course that I offer, I would probably want to separate each client into their own group because I'm teaching them on different days and I'm supporting them on different time schedules. So I would parse them out into the groups and I say, okay, client A, I had my 10 students from client A, and all of my students from client A have already finished. So I'll send them an email thanking them for participating and asking them to reply to me with one thing that was their takeaway, something like that. Client B, I know that these 7 users are all from client B because they have the client B group as a data point. And so I can reach out to anyone from client B and say, oh, okay, they started 2 weeks later, so that's why some of them are still in progress. I know not just the name of the participant, but I know which group they're in, which gives me great context of why they're on a different time schedule, or maybe even what their background might be, right? That's why we would manage them in groups rather than just adding everybody as an individual. It gives you that extra information of who you shared this with and why you shared it with them. And then you can look at what's in progress. You can see who has started it, who has already completed at least one or at least started one milestone. So started is just accepted and looked at your plan. Progress is they have actually opened some content. And then completed is someone who has finished all milestones. In my testing, this is not instant. So if you are trying to test plans and you notice that this is showing 0, even though you have your second user definitely accepting the plans and going through content, do not be alarmed. It's about a 1.5 to 2 hour delay for it to update with the information from my testing. You might have different results based on what time of day you're using or where you are, but I would expect it to take about 2 hours to update, which is fine because you're letting all of your users work on this content across multiple days to achieve this milestone. You're not really expecting to check in with them 2 hours later and say, hey, did you finish that plan I just sent you? Like, it's a little bit overbearing. Maybe they wouldn't really enjoy that. So we want to give them time to go through this. A few days later, you check back in, you say, okay, people are progressing in this manner. Even if it's not instant, it's still enough for you to manage it. It downloads as a CSV, so I just want to show you a little bit of what that looks like. So here is a export of the information. I have intentionally truncated the user ID and the username because these are real people I was sharing it with. But you can see how I've broken it up into groups. So here I was sharing this with some LinkedIn marketing insiders, and then I also shared this for a test group for this session. And you can see when each user started on the plan and when they completed it and how many items they completed. These all show as 0 because I put everything into, for this particular plan, I put everything into one milestone. And I was mostly asking them to check out the content and give me feedback on if they thought that this was a good plan for some other users to share it with them later. So none of the users went through the entire milestone. And remember I mentioned the milestone is what is tracked as a completion. So if they complete one milestone, it'll show one item completed here. So if we go back to our plan about plans example, and we go to manage and view progress, right? Because I have just shared this with everybody, it's not updated yet, like I mentioned. So after you have gone through and you've completed some milestones, I'll see this start to update for everybody who has tested out the user side. And then once that's updated, then I'll see the started, in progress, and completed amount of users, but the CSV shows me how many items each user has completed. So I can use all of this and I could put this data into a graph or into even, I could link it to Power BI if it was something that I was doing very often with many clients. It might be good information to have. So this CSV is available for you to reference. Again, quick note, once your users have started on a plan, you are not able to delete a published plan. So before you share, do be careful, because if you create something that is half done and then you think, oh, actually I want to delete that, I don't really like this plan, make sure you haven't shared it with any users yet, because they're in progress for that, you can't just delete something that they have already begun. All right, we're coming close to time, so I will wrap up and just review everything we've talked about. So we went over very basically what plans are, and then we also just went over the use cases of plans, when we would even use a plan, and how they're different from those collections that we've already been using. We also talked about the setup, what the requirements are to make a plan. Essentially, you make your collection, you sign into Microsoft Learn first, and then you make a collection, and then that collection can create a plan. And then we talked a little bit about the management. There's really only 2 things you do for management, which is look at how far along the users are and adding new users via the invite feature. It's a very new feature in Learn. We can all use this for free, which is great for us as trainers. There's no additional licensing or anything. And I think that it has a lot of potential, especially as we continue to use the tool and give Microsoft feedback about improvements or additional features.